Okay, so here we are at the computer about a week later. You just heard the final mix, and I wanted to break down the processing and all of the crazy stuff I did to get those sounds. You can see that I've got up here on the computer, I've got my reference or my Brody Simpson example. So here's what this sounds like. Which is so good, and my goal wasn't to reproduce that exactly, it was to get something like that with the gear that I have and the mixing that I did, but I'm not going to get that exact sound, so my hope was to take inspiration from it and then sort of do my own thing. So again, you already heard my take on it, so let's get this out of the way, and let's listen to what all of those tracks sounded like dry, so no effects. This is just what came into the interface. Okay, so not bad, but fairly flat, fairly uninspiring. And here is, let me turn all the plugins back on just to remind you, here's what it sounded like afterwards. Okay, so let's talk about some of this fun stuff here. Part of that sound is having everything be very separate, very dry, and having all of the pieces of the kit be very individualized instruments. So I wanted everything to be very, very separate and mix from the close mics first, and then I wasn't even sure if I was going to use the overheads in room at all. I actually didn't need to. I did use a little bit of the room mic, but we'll get into that. So let's start with the kick. Kick, which has kind of two different sections, sounds like this. That's the first part. Second part sounds like this. So there's a kick in and a kick out. So the kick in is an Audix D6. It sounds like this. Let's just go through the plugins as quickly as we can. Gatey weighty, this is my favorite gate. This of course is important for gating the kick. Okay, let me turn all these off as well. Isotope vinyl, you'll see me use this quite a lot. This is to, I hate using this term or overusing this term, but this sort of makes the sound a little more lo-fi. It's going to take off some top end, it's going to take off some low end, and it's going to sound a little bit warmer overall and a little more lo-fi. So you'll see this a lot. The SSL channel, what am I doing here? I am taking off more low end and high end. Yeah, you just notice how it still sounds a little too crispy with this off. And then you turn it on and it just sounds a little bit warmer. J37, this is a tape emulation from Waves that I like and use all the time. You can see I've got a bunch of saturation going on. Pro Q3. EQ here, just taking away some low end or some low mids, I suppose, that I didn't like for some reason. Not making a huge difference. And then another vinyl at the end of the chain. I was mixing very quickly, and with this sort of process, I was making some more extreme and sort of maybe odd decisions in this mixing style, but I feel like that's kind of what you need to do to get this sort of sound. So anyways, don't ask me to explain it. I've just got another vinyl at the end. Just adding a little more saturation. Okay, the kick out mic. So first thing here, once again, we've got the gate on there, which is just doing this. Super important there. You can see I've got the virtual mix rack because this mic is an ML2, which means that I can emulate different microphones. And in this case, I used the FET47 emulation. Okay, again, SSL channel, brought in some high end, took out some low mids. Also took out a ton of high end up here, big low pass. Okay, here's a cool one. This is called Bark of Dog, BOD, and I'm not 100% sure exactly how it does what it does, but it basically adds in a particular low frequency to whatever signal you are putting it on. So in this case, I've got a huge boost of 60 hertz. And that gives you that super low, warm, bottom end that at least I was hearing in Brody's example. Okay. Big EQ moves going on here. This is me just trying to make it sound even more unnatural, even less natural, taking out a bunch of high end, scooping out some frequencies that I felt made it sound more natural, made it sound more roomy or more realistic. Just trying to pull those out and then add in this little bump here at 45. Again, I just want that like super almost 808 sounding sort of low end. And then vinyl at the end. I'm actually almost using this more as a compressor than anything because the signal is going in pretty hot and there's some kind of natural saturation that's happening. So this is almost being used kind of like a compressor. Put those two together. And then we add this bus processing here. We've got CLA drums. This is a great just like cheat if you don't want to spend much time on a bass drum or any other drum and you want a very processed sound. This Waves plugin, the CLA drums, will do something like this. Again, we're just pushing it further and further into this unrealistic sort of sound. All right, another instance of vinyl on here. Again, don't ask me to explain it. I don't know. Yeah, you can hear how it just makes it almost a little bit smaller sounding. That's super cool. That's like kind of 8080. And then this kind of tones it down just a little bit. Okay, lo-fi, got some distortion, a little bit of saturation. And then finally, smack attack. And I'm being pretty extreme here. I'm making fairly extreme moves with a lot of the stuff that's going on here. So we've got a lot of attack and taking out a bunch of sustain. So now we've got it's almost like a sample you would get in like a hip hop sample pack. Okay, so then the fun stuff when the sub kick comes in. This is a DIY sub kick that my dad made for me. It sounds like this. Okay, Katie Wadey for obvious reasons. I also have Bark of Dog on here as well, but I'm going even lower. I'm still adding a ton, but it's way down at 49 hertz. Yeah. Okay, lo-fi, a bunch of distortion. J37, again, a little tape emulation with a bunch of saturation. Woo! So now we're into this crazy super processed 808 territory. And then I've got a compressor, just cuz. And actually that's bringing the volume down. Okay, adding in even more 54 and taking out any high end that was left over. And at first I thought that was going to be the sound, but I just wanted to go a little bit further. And so I put micro shift on here, which hopefully you're listening in headphones or you can hear this in stereo because it goes from this to only kicks in the second half of the groove. So you can hear it goes from this to this. And that was another thing that I noticed about Brody's grooves and the videos that he posts, is that there's a lot of automation and having certain things pop in certain places. So different effects will kick in and kick out, and we'll see some of that a little bit later as well. Okay, moving on to the snare. Now, I noticed after the fact that I went for my piccolo snare, and I was going for a very, very neutral sound, and I noticed that Brody's snare was actually a lot ringier than mine, so I decided to try and not chase his sound exactly, but to go with this thing. So let's turn all these off, and snare top. And then snare bottom. And the snare bottom in this case actually has the more like sample-y sound. It sounds a little bit more like a sample. So I'm using a fair amount of the snare bottom. Here's both of them together. For the top, I've just got a little dip in the low mids. And then a little bit of saturation, nothing too crazy. And then snare bottom, all I've done is high passed. That's all I did, actually, I just high passed. So most of what's being done is here on the snare bus. First of all, we've got gatey weighty, of course, because we need to gate this out. Everything should be as isolated as possible. Easy. SSL channel, adding in some top end, and that's it. So it's fairly bright, so you can already probably guess that we're going to need to make this a little bit warmer sounding, a little less crispy. But first we got to add some compression with the CLA 76. Okay. This EQ, this is a Soundtoys EQ. I never really know how to pronounce this. CQ. But this is great for adding in mid-range, and I'm just adding in a little bit of 1.5 and a little bit of drive here. Vinyl, once again. Does a great job of just kind of rolling off that really, really crispy high end that we don't want in this scenario. Okay. I am attenuating more high end with the Pultec emulation here. And then this is pretty unusual. I definitely wasn't planning on adding any reverb, but in this case, I felt like I heard just like this subtle layer of reverb that didn't sound like real reverb. Actually, it sounds like he's doing some cool stuff to that reverb. I didn't spend a bunch of time on it, but I just wanted to add this little bed of reverb on the snare. And it actually sounds fairly significant when we're just listening to the snare mic, but when you listen to all of it, it totally gets tucked into the mix. So we've got that going on. And then you can see I've got this H delay. This is a Waves plugin, and this gets kicked on over here. It gets automated, I believe. Just something extra to be kind of interesting. All right, moving right along. We did not use overheads at all. You can see that I mixed it a little bit, but didn't use the overheads in this mix. The room I did end up using, and the room sound with no mixing sounds like this. Oh, it's super, super quiet. Let me pull it up here so you can hear it. Sounds fine, but we don't really need room sound very much in this sort of scenario. So what I wanted to do was just add just a small layer of like crunch, not really ambience. I just wanted like the whole kit to sound a little crunchier. So that's kind of what I wanted to add. So what I did was I just went wild with the Fairchild emulation. All right, here we are. Again, kind of lo-fi the sound by taking away a bunch of low end and high end. But it still wasn't crunchy enough, so added another Pultec, another Fairchild. Sorry. Okay, and then I pulled that way down in the mix. Okay, so ignore my routing here where it says toms and then it says cymbal and tom. The cymbal, this was kind of a fun one. I had a close mic on the cymbal, which I don't usually do, and it sounded like this. That was it on its own, which actually is fairly close to what I was hearing in Brody's example. So what I've got going on is just some major cleanup here in the low mids, a bunch of different bands, and a little bit in the 2 to like 4K area is just abrasive to me, so I tend to do some cleanup there. Because really all I want is just that ding sound. So this is highly unusual. This is maybe the first time I've ever gated a cymbal, but here we are. But it works perfectly for our purposes here. I've got isotope vinyl once again. Just hoping Pro Tools doesn't crash here. Okay. All right. Again, just trying to take out that crispy high end, make it sound a little more vintage. We've got the J37. Okay, here's where the magic is in this cymbal. I was really trying to figure out the effect that Brody had going on. Kind of that wobbly sound, and I was having a tough time figuring it out. And I don't know if this is the plugin that he's using, but I found that if I use the wow control, so I've got some saturation and just that little bit of wobble there. And then I can't remember, I think this phaser I was thinking of using. Oh yeah. Okay, so this phaser gets automated right over here. Yeah, so just one hit is a little more interesting than the others, and this is called M Phaser. There's a whole suite of plugins called it's M, MEQ, M Phaser, and they're pretty much all free. So that worked well. And then for the tom, which is labeled as Tom 2 here, the floor tom, what do we got going on? Yeah, so here's what the tom sounded like on its own. Let me pull out all this stuff. Sounds, again, decent. We needed to gate it. Great. Take out a bunch of kind of low mid-range, some of that high stuff, some low mids, and then huge boost at 60 hertz. Okay, that's a big move right there. Again, we want, or at least I was trying to make things sound more like samples and less like real drums. Cool. Okay, J37, I've got a bunch of saturation going on. Oh, sorry, and this saturation is automated. So it kicks off here, and then it comes back in here. Yeah. So we get that, that heavily distorted, saturated sound. A little bit of lo-fi, a little distortion, saturation. Isotope vinyl, once again, for reasons that should be obvious by now. Cool. This vintage filter. Oh yeah. This works in tandem with the J37. Yeah. Actually, it might be this. I think it might just be this that's doing most of the distorting. Smack attack. I just wanted some extra attack. Therefore, I used smack attack. I just wanted a much stronger transient. So, okay, that's the tom. We are reaching the end here, I promise. So we've got the hi-hat, which I don't use until the second half. That's with it mixed. This was it on its own. Very different. Taking away a bunch of low end. With vinyl taking away a ton of top end. And the difference here is that I've set the year to 1930. You can kind of use this year selection almost as like an EQ control. And here's the difference. That's 2000 then. So very vintage sounding. Then I've got a limiter on there just to try and kind of keep everything tight and in line. And normally I wouldn't use a limiter on a hi-hat because it could make things sound kind of crunchy in a way that I wouldn't want, but that is kind of what I want in this case. So the rules go out the window. And then finally, I have a mic in my room that I've got set up just on the floor, and I get this kind of cool knocky sound out of it. It's kind of sitting next to the bass drum. And in this case, all I did was I only have it popping in. What it is, just heavily distorted it, and I have it popping in to give this sort of like white noise snare sound. Yeah, so if I take these away, it's just getting like a snare bottom sound. But I've got J37 with a ton of saturation. And then Fresh Air. This is great. This is a great free Stephen Slate plugin that just adds top end in a really nice way. And then, this is just to make things stereo. So I've got a dual delay. I've got a stereo delay, and I've just got it on 11 milliseconds on one side and 14 on the other. So again, if you're listening in headphones, this is what that does. Here's without it. Here's with. Just becomes a stereo sort of thing. So when you listen with the full track, we've got like, yeah, this thing going on. Again, just sort of playing off of this idea that Brody has different sections, different mixing elements in different sections, and automation and that sort of thing. It's what keeps it interesting and you know, keeps it fun. So last thing we need to talk about mixing wise is very quick, and that's just the overall drum bus. I've got some compression with the API 2500. Here's without it. It's not a huge difference. I'm just trying to kind of keep things tight. Fresh Air, again, I did just talk about this, so here's without. And then with. It really just kind of breathes some life into it, but I like it with and without. And then the last thing is just my Fab Filter Pro L2, which is just giving me a little bit of volume at the end. Yeah, I know that's a lot of reduction there, but this is meant to be a fairly brazen and not haphazard, but a fairly aggressive mix. So I'm kind of throwing caution to the wind on this one. So that is pretty much it. I tried to be as quick as possible, but I know that there's a lot there. But if I skimmed over anything, or if you have any questions on anything that I did in particular, feel free to let me know. And if you want me to do more videos like this, I would love to, because it was a lot of fun. It was more challenging than I thought, and I certainly didn't get exactly the sound that I was going for, but it was a lot of fun to create this, and I would love to do more of them. So let me know what you thought. Again, let me know if you want to see any longer breakdowns on this kind of thing, although this is probably long enough. I will let the final audio and video play one more time, but thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.